When we think about what aphasia is, it's an acquired language disorder. Most often that happens after some sort of brain injury. The most common is from stroke, but it can also happen after traumatic brain injury or brain tumor. This is where part of the ability to communicate, either verbally by speaking or by writing or by what you might be able to understand from hearing someone speak to you or reading information, becomes disrupted. Aphasia affects everyone differently. I have not seen two cases that look or present the same.
Aphasia is the result of a cerebral infarct, which is when brain tissue gets starved of oxygen because an artery gets clogged or there's a rupture of a blood vessel. That tissue being starved of oxygen, it can die, and that's what's called a brain infarction. And if the infarction affects a part of the brain that is important for language, for speaking or understanding language, then you develop language problems, which is aphasia. So in this model of the brain, this is the lateral surface of the brain. Right here we have a big fold called the Sylvian fissure, and the cortex around this area is called the perisylvian cortex, and it's particularly important for language processing. So when a brain infarct or stroke affects this part of the brain, that's when the person will develop aphasia. And depending on on the extent of the damage and the type of the damage, that can be long-term, it can be permanent, or it can recover over the course of months or years. I'm going to take now the left hemisphere that has a lesion here showing a part of the brain that was damaged due to stroke.
Most recent estimates across the nation estimate around 2 million people are with aphasia in the United States. Annually, those statistics range between 180 to 200,000 new cases every year. We don't have precise numbers for here in the state of Wisconsin. If you look at some previous data that suggested that there are around 11,000 hospitalizations related to stroke care, then you can kind of say that those numbers are significant within our state. And post-stroke disability is one of the leading causes for long-term disability, particularly in individuals who have aphasia and are unable to return to work.
Aphasia is a language disorder, but more than that, it actually affects everyone's entire life. Not being able to communicate effectively has significant impacts on people's quality of life, on their rates of depression, on lots of things that affect their daily lives.
The specific case that we're interested in is fortunate severe conditions where stroke selectively damages the brain areas that are responsible for turning thoughts into words. People are unable to find the words to express what they would like to say.
These patients, they have their semantic system, which is their conceptual, their ideas, the meanings of the words, so to speak, they're intact. So they know what they want to say, they just can't find the words to say it. And they also cannot extract meaning from words when they hear them or when they read them. They have the concepts in their minds, and they know what they want to say. It's the breakdown of the phonological system that prevents them from doing that.
We see as a new avenue for them to communicate, building these implantable devices in the brain, these brain neuroprosthetics that are able to directly translate their brain activity to some form of communication, speech or text or something like that.
For this project, we are focusing on looking at brain patterns of activity while they are doing naturalistic language. We just engage with them in conversations while we record all the brain signals on these different areas of the brain. And then Andrew and the rest of the team, they're going to use those signals to basically model how this language is happening.
The patients that we record this data from, they come in for mapping of their seizure locations. To do this, we need to implant these invasive electrodes into their brains. And so we take this opportunity to record these potentials from different areas of their brains. They sit there for sometimes days and days while the clinical team is waiting to map out their seizures. And at the same time, we are able to plug in to the same electrode system and record their brain activity while they do either tasks or just sit there and do random things through the day. In this project, we're focusing on trying to capture natural speech. So we are recording the audio in the room constantly and also recording their brain data. So we can map on the speech and the speech that they're producing, the speech that they're listening to, and map that to the brain activity that we're recording.
This is the actual electrode that is implanted in the patient's brains. So what you can see here are that is what we call the intracranial EEG. So this is going to be inserted by a neurosurgeon, and then it's going to allow us to record the activity of a group of neurons.
When you think of a particular idea or a concept or a word meaning, there is a pattern of activation in these areas of the brain that is characteristic of that particular concept. If we can measure the distribution of activation in a person's brain with enough precision, we can tell from that what is the concept the person was thinking about. And then a computer can reconstruct the person's intended speech from this neuroactivation in these areas that are preserved. So that's the basic idea.
Thanks to AHW, we are collecting hours of SEEG recordings as epilepsy patients remain in hospital under pre-surgical evaluation. And during this time, they engage in many conversations that we are recording as audio data. And with these two data sources, brain data and audio data, we are beginning to train early stage brain decoding models that transcribe meaning that is encoded in brain signals and turn it into text.
When we describe the kinds of projects that we're doing here, one of the responses we frequently get is, "It sounds like sci-fi." We have pretty good data so far that these projects are possible, that we're able to decode some data from the brain. This project specifically, we're trying to kind of take the first step towards decoding speech from invasive electrodes in the brain. This project is not going to produce a full device that you're able to walk out, but we are hoping to produce enough data that we're confident that with more data, with a little more research, we'll actually be able to produce an actual physical device to decode the brain.
If we could decode, when people are saying, I know what I want to say, I just can't find the word. Well, if we could decode what that thought is and bypass the sound system that can't find the actual word to help produce that, that would be game-changing.
Our grand vision is to develop brain-computer interface technologies that can read the meaning or the intended meaning that people wish to express from brain signals and use AI models to transform it into text or synthesized speech for them. And even though this technology is on the distant horizon and it sounds like science fiction, there is good reason to now believe that this approach is plausible.